Well, that first deal, I want to say it was doing like maybe $225,000 a year in revenue, one truck, one crew, probably netting 60 grand a year. And,
Mhm.
call it SDE. It was a pretty lean operation. No flex warehouse space, just a truck, equipment, and a couple of, you know, contract employees. And so, I bought it for 120 grand. I was looking for other deals, right? And found another deal on Biz Buy Sell in the same space that I was already in, but this one was a lot bigger, more established, been around for 20 years. Same exact thing. They were doing the same exact stuff that we were doing. They just been at it for a really long time, very established. But it was in Florida, and I live in Dallas Fort Worth, Texas, and so I was like, this is a perfect deal. Like it was I think it was like $1.3 million deal, like list price. They were doing $1 million a year in revenue, 450 net. Like they're very profitable. It's a very profitable industry. I bought it for 1.3 million and sold it for 5.8 million.
Steve, great to have you on the show.
Man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Really excited to talk to you because I was a huge fan of CSI Miami for many years. And I know you bought a couple of crime scene cleanup businesses, which I don't know anything about. And
Yeah.
I think you put in tens of thousands of dollars and it ended up selling the business for almost $6 million in a
Yeah.
relatively short period. So I want to cover the full curve of your acquisition and how you got into ETA and then the exit and then post exit as well. But tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about your background first.
Yeah. So I have an interesting background. I was a camera operator in sports TV for 10 years. That's what I went to school for. I went to Michigan State, got my degree in, TV, radio, and film. And I always kind of wanted to work in sports, big sports fan growing up. Um, and ultimately that's was my first job out of college after I graduated, was at ESPN. I got my dream job and was a camera guy in the studios in Bristol at the mothership, they call it. And yeah, I was working on shows that I grew up watching: Sports Center, Sports Nation, NFL Live, all these Mike and Mike in the Morning, all these cool shows. And I think I learned pretty quickly that, well, number one, I wasn't making enough money. Like I think I was making like $32,000 a year as a salary, right? First job out of college, dream job. Like I didn't really care, but I had student loans, and I was just like, all right, I don't know if this is going to work from a financial perspective. COVID happened, and I remember I was scheduled to go like do an NBA game, and it was all over the news, and it was like NBA was like the first uh, sports league to shut down, like to like say, hey, we're ceasing operations while the pandemic stuff was happening. And so I was like, okay, well, and it was just so much unknown at that point, right? And so I was basically out of work for who knows how long. And so that kind of forced my hand. And I was like, well, maybe I should do something different. This is also at the same time I found out my wife was pregnant with our first two kids, because we had twins.
Mm,
So wife's
amazing.
pregnant with twins. Freelancer without work. We were financially safe. My wife's job, she just worked from home, and we lived below our means, and had enough savings, and all that type of stuff to kind of weather the storm for a little while. Who knew what was going to happen? But yeah, that kind of led me down the road to going, well, maybe I should buy a small business. A friend of mine was a business broker. Did some biz dev for him for a little while, and so I kind of knew a little bit about that. So I called him up and I said, hey, like, I got nothing else going on. So what if I buy a small business? And so that's what I set out to do. And so I just started searching biz buy sell, kind of like a lot of people do, and was like, didn't really know. And ultimately, I ended up getting my first deal done as a very small deal. And I met with a guy. We ended up playing golf, talking about one of his listings, and that listing, for whatever reason, was, it went away. I think it was the wife kept the business or something. And so he's like, unfortunately, that deal is no longer available. And we got to talking. He had been in crime scene cleanup before. And so I was like, hey man, I see
This was
these
the
crime.
broker.
This was the broker.
Okay.
And I was like, I've seen these crime scene cleanup listings. I know you've been in that space. Like, is that something I should look at? And he's like, well, a lot of those a lot of those resales are franchises. And he was like, a couple of them are good, a couple of them I wouldn't touch, but he's like, I'm actually selling mine because he was in a franchise in that space, sold it, moved up to Dallas Fort Worth, started another one out of his non-compete area, and he was like, I'm moving to Hawaii. I just always wanted to do it. I sold my business. I started this one, but I want to get out of here. I want to go live in Hawaii for a little while. And so I'm selling mine. I didn't want you to think I was just trying to sell you my business, but like, if you're interested, obviously we can talk. So yeah, we got to talking, and the industry was fascinating to me. I knew nothing about it, but I knew it was home service and it was in that restoration space. And so I was like, we just got to talking, and it was the right size and the right time. And it just happened that crime scene cleanup was what they did. And so we did a deal. That first deal, I want to say it was doing like maybe $225,000 a year in revenue, one truck, one crew, probably netting 60 grand a year. And,
Mhm.
call it SDE. It was a pretty lean operation. No flex warehouse space, just a truck, equipment, and a couple of, contract employees. And so I bought it for 120 grand. So 2X of the, on paper, what it was netting. And at the time, during COVID, the CARES Act allowed you to borrow from your retirement accounts as long as you paid it back within 3 years, tax free, penalty free, interest free, basically give yourself a loan. And so I did that. I borrowed money out of my 401k, paid cash for it from that, right? But none of my own, personal savings cash, and then paid it back within 3 years. So grew that company. TV came back, decided to do one more football season, one more, kind of full year of TV work at the same time I was trying to grow the business. And it was one of those things where I was like, well, let me just do both of these until it becomes too much, right? Or the business really is kind of able to get me out of TV. I made okay money in TV. I made 130, 150 grand a year. So I was like, all right, this thing's making 60. How do I get it to make 100, 150 grand a year in net? That way I can just have my income replaced from TV and not have to travel, not have to do that anymore. And yeah, it took me a couple years to get to that point, grew it, and then was able to walk away from TV. So I was just doing the business full time, had hired some additional people, bought an extra, bought a second truck, just kept marketing, kept doing our thing, and kept trying to like really kind of learn that business inside and out. And because I just have that entrepreneur bug, and we're all a little crazy, I think. I was looking for other deals, right? And found another deal on Biz Buy Sell in the same space that I was already in, but this one was a lot bigger, more established, been around for 20 years.
Same franchise or different brand?
So the one that I bought wasn't a franchise.
Okay.
And the second one wasn't either. So they were both just privately held. The guy who I bought from had been in a franchise prior to the one that he started and I bought from him. So just, same exact thing. They were doing the same exact stuff that we were doing. They just been at it for a really long time, very established, but it was in Florida and I live in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. And so I was like, this is a perfect deal. Like it was I think it was like $1.3 million deal, like list price. They were doing $1 million a year in revenue, 450 net. Like they're very profitable. It's a very profitable industry. And they did all of like what they excelled at was the thing that we struggled with in Dallas, which was getting those like insurance cleanup jobs. So like the residential jobs, they're typically after death cleanup type things. So somebody passes away in a home one way or the other, and there's a mess to clean up. Typically, homeowners insurance, pays for our services, and that's where the money is in that space. Like, it just is what it is. And they had figured out over time and relationships and referrals that like they just had a system going. Well, I found out during due diligence that they were like wildly undercharging for the insurance jobs. And I knew because we did the same jobs in Dallas, and I was like, man, I charge like 3 times as much as they charge, and I don't have any problem collecting from insurance. Like, and I'm not just like guessing what to charge. Like it was industry standard. Like I, talked to other people in the industry, and it's like, how do, there's ways to bill insurance properly and there's systems to use. And they'd been around for so long. They hadn't started, they charged a little bit more than they used to when they first started, but they were just always nervous that insurance was going to be a pain to collect from. And they just were leaving a ton of money on the table. And they kind of knew that. Like, I even asked them, during due diligence, like, hey, why don't you guys charge more? And they were
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, we probably could, but we just don't. I'm like, okay. So I figured I could fix that. And yeah, that was kind of a big piece to the puzzle for me, why I was super attracted to buy it. So I had to fly down to Florida, meet them, convince them to sell it to me. They were a little particular about who they wanted to have operated. I think they had some concerns that I was going to be not living there full time, but there was like an ops manager kind of running a lot of the show. And I just asked, like, hey, is this somebody who I could basically turn into a general manager and have really be the operator? And they said yes, like, that here's their strengths, maybe some weaknesses, but like, we think that that person could do it. So, okay, great. Like, that's gonna be my plan. Like, hopefully that works out. And it did, right? Like, as soon as I took over, immediately promoted her to general manager, increased her salary, and just kind of got together with everybody and said, hey, like, I've done this before. I own another one of these back where I live, and full steam ahead. So
Mm-hmm.
and then that's where things got a little crazy in the story, because less than 6 months later, I sold both of them.
Oh, okay. How
So
many? So just tying the pieces together a little bit. How many trucks did the second business have when you took over?
they only had 2 trucks,
Okay.
but they were pretty efficient. Like, they could do with those 2 trucks and the full time crew. Um, I think the most jobs we ever did in a day was like 4. Like, we could do 4 full blown cleanup jobs in a day, uh, depending on where they were. We serviced pretty much the whole state of Florida, not all the way down to the south, but like, we would drive within like a 3.5 hour radius of where we were based out of.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and their setup was a little bit different. They did trucks and trailers, whereas in Dallas we had box trucks. But I mean, it's all the same stuff, just different ways to go do it. And the first thing I fixed was the billing. Like, I just went into the person who did the billing. I remember getting our first job after I bought it and saying, all right, like, write up this estimate the way that you would write it up before. And I was like, okay, well, here's what we're going to do now. And we made our changes, and they were just, yeah, underbilling in these certain areas. I got a couple of line items out of it. I was like, when you take this, you set up this bill and you take it to insurance, like, what's the thing they push back on the most? She's like, this line item right here, it's this fuel surcharge. We always do it. I don't agree with it. $250. We always put it on there. I'm like, okay, get rid of it. So I got rid of a $250 line item, and then increased the rest of the bill in the proper areas by like 60%,
Mm-hmm.
because they were just not billing enough for the right hours and the right stuff. Everything that we were doing, we just weren't billing insurance for the stuff that we were doing. Like, it wasn't rocket science, right? Um, and sure enough, like, not only did we get paid more, we had no pushback from insurance, and we collected faster.
Did
So
anybody tell you that, hey, insurance is not going to pay this, or you're going to have issues with this? Anybody
when I
push
first
back?
brought it up, in the first meeting with the entire team, they're like, what are you going to do different? And I said, well, for the most part, we're not going to do much different at all. Like, you guys have a great business. I'm just here to not screw this up. Of course, I want us to grow and continue to do what we're doing, but we're going to bill more. And there was like
Yeah.
collectively. And I
Yeah.
said, I know,
Charging more
just,
money is always an icky
just,
strategy for at least
yeah,
for a moment, until
right.
people realize it makes the whole company better.
Right. And so I was like,
Yeah.
just hear me out, but just trust me. We're going to try this. And if it doesn't work and we get pushback, then we'll adjust. It's fine.
Mhm.
Like, I don't have to make this change. Like, I bought the business based off what it's doing now, not what it could do if they build more. And so, yeah, we made that change. And yeah, so immediately overnight, I mean, we were already, the thing is, I didn't even own it for long enough to know what it would have done in a year. But yeah, our run rate was
What would you
well,
guess the run rate was? So you bought it a little over $1 million of revenue, 400K of STE. What were you
we were
tracking
on
towards?
pace to do probably 1.5 million net.
Wow,
Yeah.
huge jump.
Yeah.
I
Big
guess it was
jump.
all going to the bottom line. Those
Yeah.
price increases.
Yeah.
That
So
makes sense.
it was a pretty big jump. we were also setting sales records. Like we were doing more jobs than we'd ever done in a month before. So like all the things were hitting at the same time. Like we're billing more. All of a sudden jobs are really flowing in. Everybody's hitting on all cylinders. And um, yeah, then I got connected with somebody who was in the industry that I knew sold recently. And I heard that he sold to a private equity company. So I just asked him about it. And I was like, hey, I've got these two businesses. I would love to be in a position to exit them at some point in the future. Like, I want to take what I've learned from this bigger business that I bought and improve the smaller one and then package them up and, maybe sell them to the same company that you sold them to. But this was at the same time we were having to look at when I bought the business, the property that we operated out of was like a flex space, had warehouse space, had office space in it, but is owned by the property and the building and everything was owned by the sellers. And it was agreed upon during the deal that I would eventually move it. Like I could lease it from them for like a year, but as soon as I got there, I had to start looking for other space because, like it was just like, hey, they were there, they ran other businesses kind of out of part of that too. And so it was always kind of like, all right, we're going to go and maybe move it to a better location that's a little bit more centrally located for us to, to travel and hire and these different things. So it was the first thing one of my first projects was to start on where we're going to move this thing in a year. And I just didn't want to push that off too long. So I was looking at signing, 6-7 year leases at a flex space. And, they're not wild. It's not like retail prices, but, it was a little bit, it was like, it was going to be a big deal. Right. And so I was asking the guy who sold the private equity, I said, hey, do you know, like, did they just absorb you? Did they keep the operations? Did they I'm about to go sign a 6-7 year lease on a place. Like before I sign on the dotted line, I just want to make sure like what would that look like? And he was like, man, I think you should have a conversation with them now. And I was like, okay, this is probably, I don't know, a quarter into owning it, so like 3 full months of me owning it and operating it. And he introduced me to this private equity company. And I kind of told him like, hey, I'm not really looking to sell both of these. Like I just bought this one like recently. Like I just closed on it. We're only a few months in. Everything's going great. We're growing. I want to improve this. I want to grow the smaller one. And they were like, well, we really want to make you an offer and we think we can make it a compelling offer. We started talking through numbers and kind of what both businesses were doing. And I was like, okay, well, it's got to be something that's going to make me walk away, And so it was interesting because there was definitely risk in it for them, right? Because I had just completely overhauled our billing and now things are going really well. It was like, what type of premium do they put on that when there's not even a year's worth of that data? And there's risk for me selling it too early. There's risk for me holding it and something going wrong. And then I had this big offer in front of me and me not taking it. So anyway, a couple weeks go by, I sent them the basic initial financials and stuff that they requested. And they're like, all right, we have an offer for you. And they're like, we want to buy both of them. The first offer was, we want to buy both businesses. Total purchase price, 6.1 million. We want $1 million of earnout over, I can't even remember what it was. Maybe like 3 years or 5 years or something, right? Like $1 million of earnout if we hit these benchmarks because, you just improved this business and it kept going, whatever. And so I was like, I don't know, man. Definitely don't want $1 million of earnout, and I didn't want to sell both. I just wanted to sell the one that I just wanted to flip the one basically. Cause I was like, look, I increased the value of it. I can get the money right now and walk away. It's in a different state. And then I can use what I've learned in the 4 or 5 months that I've owned this one and improve my smaller one and then sell it to them in 3 years. And they were like, no, we really want both. And I was like, okay, well, I'll sell you both if we do all cash at closing, no earnout. And they were like, all right, let me go talk to the team or whatever. Let me go talk to my manager, however they do it. And they came back like, all right, we'll do that deal. We'll do all cash at closing. But you have to sell us both of them. Here's the valuation for one. It was kind of two separate deals. Like it was all one transaction, but there was two separate purchase agreements and stuff because there were two entities, but it was all looped up into one deal. So the small one was, I think I sold the small one for 350 grand, and then the bigger one was like 5.85 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the big one was the catalyst, right? I mean, the big one was I bought it for 1.3 million and sold it for 5.8 million in
Amazing
less than
outcome.
6 months. Yeah, I mean, and it's just one of those things where it's like, when is that ever going to happen again? So, I asked a couple of people, of course, my wife and the people close to me, and some of my older business friends who, I was like, hey man, what do you think about this deal? I'm like, I'm pretty sure I have to take it. And they were like, dude, I'd have to check your head if you didn't take that deal. Like, what, like, it's, you're just in a,
Yeah.
like, what do you, when's the next time that you're going to be able to turn something like that quickly? And so, I was like, all right. So, I think from start to finish, we closed it because it's private equity. There's no banks, like they had to do all their due diligence and all their stuff. And I had to give them a zillion things, but, I think it was less than 60 days. Might have been like 45 days from start
That's
to
fast.
finish to get it
And these
closed.
guys are doing some sort of roll up
Yeah.
of these types of businesses. That's kind of their
Yep.
plan.
Yeah. They'd
Okay.
already
All across the country.
owned stuff all across the country. Yeah. So they were able to just, like my smaller one, we didn't have an office space. We just had trucks and the crew and everything. And so they owned one locally anyway. So they just kind of absorbed it into that. And then the other one they kept operating. And I don't know what they've done with it since, honestly. That was the nice thing is, like, I had a general manager operating the one in Florida, so I didn't have to. They're like, hey, no offense. After closing, we don't need you. And I
Yeah.
was like, dude,
You're
music
like,
to my
lose my
yeah,
number. I'll see you later. Thank you.
yeah, music to my ears. They did hold back um 75 grand. So they held back
Mhm.
75 grand for 12 months. And that was just, they just basically said, look, we got to hold back something, whatever, right? Collections, disagreements, legal, whatever it was. And, we never had any issues. And 12 months later, they sent me a check for 75 grand. So I did, I collected it all.
So you financed the first one with a loan against your 401k. You
Yep.
bought that basically all cash. How did you finance the second one? Because it was over $1 million. How did you pay for that?
Yeah. I did an SBA 7A loan. We structured the deal so that, um, it was I know the SBA rules have changed since, but at the time, in order to count seller note towards the 10% down payment, it had to be on full standby for the 10 years. So I got the seller to do a 5% seller note on full standby. I gave her a full price offer, said, I'm going to give you a full price offer, but I want you to do 5% seller note, which wasn't a huge amount of money, 60 grand or whatever. But I need it to be on full standby. So I can't pay you back until the loan's paid off or I sell it or I refi it or whatever. So that was kind of a hurdle because that's a tough sell, but it was a small enough amount that I think I gave him a full price offer. It was like, okay, like I can wait for my 60 grand or whatever. So then I only had to come up with 5% down, and I had the cash to do it, which was like whatever, another 60 plus. It ends up being a little bit more because there's some working capital, some SBA fees. Like I think it was another $80,000 or 85 grand that I needed to come up with. So in order to keep my cash on hand, I went to my brother and said, hey, I'm buying this deal. If you want to be in, sign, you have to do nothing besides write me a check for 65 grand. We'll give you, your piece of the pie. And then I had to I think I brought $20,000 in my own cash to the deal.
And how much of the business did you give him, or how should people think about that if they're trying to raise money for a deal like
That's a
this?
good question. I mean, I gave him the amount of the percentage that he invested in because he was just an investor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that scenario, and thinking about it now, like I'm not sure if that was the right thing to do or not. Like he's my brother. Like maybe I should have given him more, but I think he was pretty happy when I wrote him a nice check, like less than 6 months later. But
Sure.
yeah, so he put 5% down, so he owned 5% of the company.
Got it.
I mean, all he did was write me a check, and then I wrote him a check 6 months later. So it was a pretty good deal for him.
Pretty good outcome for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay, great. So huge return on both of those, especially relative to cash down, right? You made $5 million, but you made a huge multiple on the amount of cash that you actually had to put into the
Yeah,
business.
the cash on cash return was for sure. But, I also had to personally guarantee a $1.3 million loan.
Yeah.
And if that
There's
doesn't
risk. There's
go,
a lot of risk in that. There's a lot of stress in it too. I've talked to a number
yeah,
of people who take the PG and then maybe the business goes backwards. They lose a bunch
yeah,
of staff or they lose a bunch of customers because one thing or the other, and that's scary.
I
It's very
shouldn't have
scary.
even I shouldn't have even done the second deal because there was red flags from the sellers. Um, just
What
as
kind of
like
red flags? Talk a little bit about those.
um, just as people, they just seemed a little like she was a little unreasonable during some points of there was some deal fatigue on both sides. They took some time to get me some stuff. The bank took some time. There was a point where she was like, "We either need to do this deal or I'm walking away." Um, I can't remember the exact things we disagreed on, but there were some things I was like, "Man, this lady just doesn't seem reasonable." Or it was a
Mm,
husband and wife, but I was like, they just don't really seem like she was just kind of set in her ways, right? And I was like, all right, whatever. It's really, really good deal. So in hindsight, and look, after I sold, they weren't very happy about who I sold it to. It was a whole thing. Um, and so their attorneys sent me letters. I had to get an attorney. We had to settle something. I still owed her. I owed her the seller note. I owed her some other stuff. So we had to settle all that stuff, obviously. But yeah, so that was afterwards. Of course, it helped because I sold and I had money to deal with that type of stuff. But it was definitely like, oh man, did I even do the right thing by buying it, selling it, and like in hindsight, when I sold, I was like, thank God, because like who knew it was going to happen? Like
for
with these
sure.
people, they were a little, there was some stuff there,
Yeah.
but knowing what I
What are
know
some
now,
lessons that you can share about just red flags to watch out for? I mean, you've bought a couple of businesses now. If somebody's a new buyer, what are some things beyond maybe the basic due diligence, or even within the basic due diligence that you think they should pay attention to?
um, I mean, you got to be semi decent at reading people. Like, does this person make you feel comfortable or uncomfortable? How do they answer questions? Um, how quickly do they answer stuff? Does it seem like they're trying to scramble things together? Like you can usually tell in a deal, right? Especially if they have a broker. They've usually got things packaged up. If it's a broker that knows what they're doing, there's a lot of the information is already gathered. But there's huge risk in it. I've heard horror stories from people who leverage SBA debt and then it goes completely haywire, right? And then you're staring down the barrel of a giant leveraged thing that's gone to crap.
Yeah,
And it very well could have happened to me. Like I don't like the lucky part that I think multiple times I got lucky. Like I'm lucky that I found the deal, lucky that they weren't billing enough, lucky I was able to buy it, leverage the money and put my money where my wealth was, like was willing to take the risk. Like that's the part that I did that, took some guts to do. And I questioned myself, like, should I do this or not a zillion times throughout the process. Um, but I think I mostly got lucky that I got in and out of that deal quick enough. And although the sellers were a little bit of pain to deal with on the back end, like it could have went a bunch of different ways that weren't in my favor. Like they didn't think I was going to succeed. They thought I was going to screw it up.
yeah. I think I've noticed that quite a bit from people who were in the industry for a long time,
Yeah.
right? Is, if you've spent 20, 30 years in the industry and a young guy comes in without 5, 10 years of experience,
Yeah.
they're kind of like, oh, I'll hand you the keys if you give me the money, but you're going to blow this thing up.
Yeah.
That is more often than not what I've seen.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And sometimes they're right.
yeah, sure. And I was okay with
Yeah.
that. And if they were,
Yeah.
if I blow it up, I blow it up. I wasn't going to be like, um, looking for an excuse, I mean, it was either I made it work or I didn't. Um, so yeah, man, it was wild and crazy. I mean, I never saw myself necessarily buying or selling businesses until I got to that point. And, the, the nature of what happened during COVID, I mean, the circumstances, and it was just kind of like forced my hand a little. I didn't have any excuses, right? I was like, oh, I can, still going to go do this thing. I was out of work and I was like, I didn't want to travel once my kids were here. Of course, I bought a business in Florida and had to travel a little bit for that, but it wasn't nearly as much as I had to travel in TV every week during football season. So,
Sure.
yeah, man, it all worked out and I definitely got lucky. But I had to be willing to take the risk in order to get into the game and have something like that potentially happen. Um,
Sure. Yeah, I hear this quite a bit of in entrepreneurship, the longer you can stay on the field, the more likely you are to get a win,
yeah,
because it does take a certain amount of luck. Your luck happen to come faster. Some people it takes them 10, 15, 20 years. But if you stay on the field long enough, eventually luck is going to strike and you're going to know how to, capture that. I
yeah.
want to hear a little bit about just like the crime scene business itself. Like
Hmm.
how does it work? Like, how do you get customers? Like, who calls you? Like, are you
Yeah,
just monitoring? I just imagine you're like monitoring the 911 calls. You're like, oh,
yeah.
wait, did somebody just die? Okay. And then you go and you like pitch a sale. But I don't know. I made that up.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, you're not necessarily wrong. It's hard, right? Because you don't want to be an ambulance chaser, right? You don't want to be like, oh yay, somebody died, or oh yay, there was this bad thing that happened, right? It's a weird industry because it's very serious, very very bad things. Dealing with our customers are typically dealing with probably the worst thing that they've ever had happen in their life, whether it's a loved one died or a loved one had an accident or whatever, right? Um, we also dealt with hoarding and like gross filth and like those types of biohazard ish cleanups. So we did a lot of hoarding stuff, which is also in itself very sad. And so from a marketing perspective, SEO, Google Ads, that type of typical thing, those for sure work. But really, where you win the game is referrals and trying to build referral bases, whether it's with apartment complexes, getting out in the community so that the people who work in the community, law enforcement, first responders, like those people know it's a delicate game because they're technically not supposed to refer companies, so you got to kind of understand what each area does. Do they have a list, and how do you earn that type of business? Because a lot of times what will happen is something will happen. The first responders or police will be at a scene, and then their job is done, and they're like, okay, we're leaving. And then the family members are there, and they're like, well, what do we do now?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, you need to call somebody to clean it up. I'm like, well, we thought you did that. Nope, sorry, we don't do that. And then they go, well, who do we call? Right. And so they're in a position to refer, even though they're not really typically supposed to. And so there's different things that you could do. But a lot of times they would say, well, just Google it. Right. So that's why, digital advertising was paramount.
Mhm.
Showing up on the first page, whether it's ads or SEO. And the thing I like about home service business, especially that one where it was urgent but not emergent, right? So it's like if you can get there within the next 24 hours, you have a really good chance of winning the job. Of course, if you can get there within a couple of hours, even a better chance, and so on. But your competition in home service is typically other companies who don't answer the phone very often. Like if you try to get any home service lately, like try to call a plumber, try to call a roofer, try to call
Yep.
whatever, right? It's like trying to pull teeth, just get somebody to show up and give you an estimate. And so I was like, okay, we can answer the phone. We can be professional. We can show up on time. We can take care of people. We can really care and do a good job. Um, and we would win jobs all the time just because we answered the phone and showed up and did what we said we were going to do, walked them through the process, helped them with the insurance piece of it, gave them peace of mind. So it's a little bit cleanup. It's a little bit, therapy. It's a little bit just being somebody to, people will cry, people will, it's crazy, right? You're dealing with
Hmm.
um, crazy stuff. And it's, crime scene's kind of the buzzword. Like we didn't do a ton of crimes. All we did crimes, right? But it was more so undiscovered deaths, self-inflicted deaths, those types of things,
Okay.
accidents. And then, yeah, we'd have the occasional crazy, homicide or some like real crime scene where it was something real bad happened. We did a couple of those types of things for sure. But, and then a lot of hoarding and just, random
And what
stuff,
what's
man.
the what's the average order value for a job like that?
Um, if it's not an insurance job, let's say I'll split up into two. Hoarding is one thing. It can vary, right? If it's a 1 bedroom apartment, depending on severity, it could be a couple $1,000s, it could be $1,500. It could be depends on what it is. But I mean, we'd probably done hoarding jobs in apartments before for $5,000 too. a whole home hoard, a 2,200, 2,500 square foot home that's real bad, full of stuff, need to empty it all out, sanitize it, disinfect it, all that stuff. Those jobs get into the multiples of tens of thousands. We've
Mm.
done 20, 30, $40,000 jobs before. Um, they're not all like that, right? I mean, we've definitely done our handful of 8 and 10. And then when you're talking about crime scene or after death cleanup, if it's not an insurance job because of either insurance coverage or maybe it's in an apartment and they just don't, their insurance premiums and stuff are different in the multifamilies. A lot of those jobs are like $5,000. Average ticket on an insurance job was probably 12 to 13,000,
Hmm.
and
And
like your typical.
what percentage are insurance versus cash pay
Depends on
in
how you
that
get your
business?
job. So like my business in Dallas was primarily not insurance jobs. Like we would get a couple of insurance jobs here and there, maybe one or two a month, and then it was a mix of hoarding and cash pay jobs at apartments and these other things to kind of make up the total. And then in Florida, it was almost exclusively insurance jobs, because they just had been doing it for so long and were so in the community and done enough things that they were one of the go-to companies all across that state. Um, and so theirs was primarily insurance jobs there.
Got it. And then what was kind of the, let's call it, average gross margin percentage on a job?
It's crazy, man. Um, I'm not in the industry anymore, so people can be mad at me if I share this. If you did a $10,000, let's call it like a standard $10,000 insurance job, um, you might have $2,000 in cost to do that with labor and disposal
Hmm.
and materials and gas and
80% or so.
yeah, so it's up there.
That's really
Um,
nice.
yeah, so I mean, obviously you've got payroll and rent and all the other, but yeah, your cost of goods for that service are really low.
And is it fairly competitive, and is there any seasonality to it? Do people die more in certain times of year?
There's some seasonality to the severity of like undiscovered deaths are worse in the summer, because of especially in the South, in Florida or in Texas. Um, so things have things get worse faster and are more to clean up faster in the summer than they are in the winter, just because of the nature of decomposing stuff and things happening, right? Like somebody can be in the winter if their you know AC's not work, or in the summer if their AC's not working and they pass away in the home and nobody finds them for a week. A lot different of a scenario than if it was in the winter and the heat
Yep.
wasn't working and they'd been kept cold. So that's the only type of seasonality thing kind of related to that. Um, Keep in mind, I was only in the industry for like 4 years, 3 4
Yeah.
years. So I don't pretend to be an expert, but yeah, we had done our fair share of those things.
Um, Fascinating. That's such an interesting industry.
Yeah.
What are you up to these days now? I know you've had kind of you're on your second or third or fourth career, I guess, depending on how we start counting these.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny. I'd watch podcasts and different things about like what you do after you sell, and I've been trying for a couple years to kind of figure out what I want to be when I grow up again. Um, and I looked at a bunch of different things, and well, first of all, I took some time off, played a lot of golf, big golfer, spent time with my kids, a ton of time. Not missing any of the things. They're going to be 5 this year, so they were kind of in the 3 year old range when I sold. So a great time to be, have all the time with them and experience all the firsts and all the cool parts of raising kids. Um, Now I have shared this story on a couple of other podcasts, um, and people had reached out and said, "Hey, your story inspired me. Can I pick your brain? Can I take you to lunch? Can we have coffee and stuff like this?" Yeah, sure. And so from that, I landed a couple of consulting clients just kind of by accident, like, "Hey, I want to buy a business. Will you help consult with me?" And I did that. I don't know it's necessarily a sustainable business. Like it's kind of hard. Like buy side consulting from the ETA perspective, um, it's a long game. It's a hard game. I think it's harder to find deals now, but you know, there's a lot more information out there about it now too, even in the last few years. So anyway, I helped a buddy get into a franchise. I helped a couple out in Boise, Idaho, buy a franchise resale, and I had been looking at franchises myself as a way to potentially get back into business. And during that, met a franchise consultant and kind of picked his brain about what it was like to be a consultant in that industry. I had really no clue about that space. Um, and after some conversations with him and my wife, I said, I think this might be a good fit for me. I kind of want to do my own thing, kind of want to work for myself. I think franchising is a potential way for me to help the most people. And I don't have to charge consulting fees because consultants they're really franchise consulting is like you're a recruiter, right? You recruit candidates for franchise brands that are typically looking to leave their 9 to 5 job or maybe add to their business portfolio, or maybe they're already multi-unit franchisees and they're looking for the next brand. Um, and so I thought it was a way for me to help the most people, because if I were to try to help 10 people at the same time, go the ETA route as a consultant, it would just be, I would think it would be a disaster. Like, I don't think I'd be able to provide, there's just a lot that goes into it. And so that's why I tried it with one consultant or with one husband and wife, and I helped them acquire a $1.4 million SBA deal, right, in a franchise resale. And it was a really cool experience. I really enjoyed it, but it took up a ton of time. I didn't charge them nearly enough, which I told them I wasn't going to up front because I hadn't really done it before. So I kind of just fell into franchise consulting. So that's what I've been doing for the last couple of months. Just now, kind of starting to get my feet under me and kind of understand that industry a little bit. But I enjoy it because I get to talk about deals. I'll help the occasional person from time to time, like somebody that wants to explore franchising, but also really wants to explore ETA. And yeah, I just try to provide value wherever I can. I just think I'll be able to help more people and actually build a business on the franchise consulting side of it. It's not for everybody, but.
Do you have a favorite franchise since you've been looking at? I'm sure you've looked at a number of franchises. Is
Yeah.
there any one in particular that's caught your eye, and why?
Yeah. So there's two brands that I really like right now. It depends, right? Like I kind of have a home service bias because I was in that space. There's a brand called Wow Window Boxes. They're brand
Okay.
new to franchising. They just started. Have you heard of it?
No, I'm gonna
Okay.
look them up.
Yeah. So they just started franchising, I think in 24. I don't know how many territories they're up to now, but they're just like their first franchise location is about to open. But their corporate location, I don't want to say it's 9 or 10 years old. The one that they built the concept off of started in Cincinnati, Ohio. All they do is window boxes with flowers like for homes, like 85% residential, maybe 15%, apartments and
Cool.
commercial type buildings. But
When
it's
I lived in
recur.
Philly, one of the things that I really know, I lived in a number of cities, but like Philly loves their window boxes. I don't know if you've been to Philly, but like during the
Yeah,
summer, it's like a competition. It just like
really.
totally goes off, and it makes the streets amazing. Like I've
Yeah.
told everybody this. I've never seen a business that does it. It makes sense that there is one. This is very
Right.
cool.
Yeah. And I had never heard of it. But that's what I like about like the franchising thing, is like looking through the different concepts and the models and what they do. And yeah, there's a ton of really cool things in a bunch of different industries, but there's some that stand out to me. I was like, oh man, I never knew that, just like crime scene cleanup, I had never heard about before. I had never heard about window boxes. Yeah. They make your window boxes. They do drip irrigation, and it's recurring. They come back 4 times a year and swap out the flowers for the seasonal flower of that time of year. And
Cool.
yeah, they have incredible unit economics. Like it's a really cool business, and they're backed by a really cool brand. Um, and so that one, another one I have a great relationship with is Pierce Bespoke. They're a mobile traveling custom clothing company. So no retail store, no inventory. And I actually referred my buddy, one of my good friends from TV. He bought their Birmingham, Alabama location. Um, but
What's
they
it
do
called?
men's
Pure Bespoke.
Pierce,
Pierce.
Pearce.
Okay.
The founder's name is Nathan Pierce. He's a younger guy. He's a really impressive entrepreneur. He was on Shark Tank season 6. Got a deal with Mark Cuban for another clothing business that he started when he was in college. And so yeah, he got to this point. They're just growing massively. Um, it's a low upfront investment, low overhead, high margin. It's just got a lot of really attractive things to the model. Like if that custom clothing and that fashion type of space is of interest, that's a really cool brand. Um, yeah, those are kind of the two that stick out to me the most. I mean, there's a bunch of them, but those are two of my favorites right now. I show those to a lot of people.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing. This has been, I mean, really good. I appreciate you sharing your sales story, your business story. What an awesome success. What is a good way for people to kind of look you up, reach out if they
Yeah,
want either business consulting or franchise consulting, learn more?
yeah. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. Steve Keller 3 is my handle. My business website for the franchise consulting stuff is franvestor.com. It's got all my contact information on there. Steve at franvestor.com is my email. My phone number is on the website. Everything, you can reach out. Yeah, if anybody's considering doing franchising and wants to talk about brands, or wants to explore, even a couple of brands that we talked about, yeah, they can. My calendar link is on the website. Obviously, they could reach out, directly to those people as well. But I would love to help anybody, kind of explore that if it's anybody's wheelhouse. But yeah, those are the easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, this has been wonderful, Steve. Appreciate you taking the time again, and I'll talk to you soon.